Hey friends, Chubby Meeple back with another Kickstarter preview for you. Today, we're going to take a look at Goblin Teeth. This is from designer Frank Tedeschi, published by Jellybean Games. Let's jump over to the table. I'll give you a quick overview of how the game plays. It's really simple. And then we'll jump back here and I'll tell you my thoughts. Alright, so this is a 4-player setup of Goblin Teeth. So in order to set this thing up, it's pretty simple. You're going to separate the item cards and the cheat cards. Now the item cards and the cheat cards have the same backs. This deck is actually the item cards, and this deck over here are your cheat cards. They have the same back because you're going to hold these cards in your hand, and you don't want your opponents to know which cards in your hand are item cards versus which ones are cheat cards. The way you tell them apart in order to separate them is that the cheat cards are going to have text that will either say action or ongoing at the top of the card. The item cards will simply have no text on them. What you're seeing here on the table face up are examples of item cards, and those will be set out as well. We are going to place those into two separate decks, shuffle and place those into two separate decks so that you have those separated out. We're going to place the offering mat, which is this mat here, is going to get placed next to the item deck, and we're going to deal onto that mat a red offering and a blue offering. These are, for this particular game, going to be the win condition, or two of the three win conditions, possible win conditions, as the game goes along. The mat has a printed offering on it, followed by your red offering and your blue offering. There are slots where to put those. You're going to return the rest of the cards to the box, the rest of the red and blue offering cards back to the box. You won't use them for this game. We're going to put the altar mat next to the cheat deck. So we have the altar mat here is next to our cheat cards, so that because they do correspond to one another, we'll see that here in a second as we go through gameplay. Each player is going to draw one cheat card, so that's what we have out here. We've got set up for a 4-player game, and I just have all 4 players set up down here at the bottom of the camera. Normally, you're obviously going to be seated around the table. But each player is going to take one cheat card into their hand, and they're going to choose a color and take the 3 dice that match their particular color. They will then roll those dice, and that will give them the starting set of dice that they're going to be using to bid on during the first round, and then those dice will be re-rolled as the game continues. The player who rolls the highest total on their dice will actually take the highest sum of dice will actually take the first player marker here. So we have 12, 12, 10, and 12. If there's a tie, then the tallest player will be first player, or of course you can randomly assign a first player. So we've made the blue player here our first player, just to make it a little bit simple and demonstrate the gameplay there. Once that is set up, you are ready to begin play of Goblin Teeth. Now, Goblin Teeth is going to be played over a series of rounds, and each round players are going to be using their dice to bid on the items in the center of the table and using cheat cards from their hand to kind of mess with the other players and give themselves advantages as they're trying to bid for these items. The round will end when all players have placed their dice. So when all dice are placed out on cards, the round will end, and each item will get awarded to the player who's bid the highest amount on that. If at the end of the round, a player has the items in their hand that match any of the 3 offerings on the offering mat, then they have won the game. They simply just show that they've got the items. Game's over, that player wins. So it's a very fast, very quick game. The question mark that you see on the card here in the red offering card, that question mark can be any one item. There are item cards that will have a question mark, an equal sign, and another question mark. That simply means that those 2 question mark items have to be the same item type. So that's something to keep in mind if you see that notation on there. At the start of the round, now in the first round we've already rolled our dice, so we don't have to do that. But at the start of the round, players are going to roll their dice. We're also going to deal 1 card from the item deck face down, so kind of a mystery item that no one knows what it is. And then we're going to deal cards face up until the item pool, the number of cards in the item pool, including the face down item, equals the number of players. So in the case of this 4-player game we have 4 items in the pool, 1 face down and 3 face up items. These items are the cards that players will use their dice to bid on, and are the items that are kind of up for grabs, if you will, during this particular round. Players will roll all of their dice. Now again, during setup, we did an initial dice roll to determine first player. Those are also the numbers of dice that you have to bid when you're bidding on the items. If, when rolling the dice, if a player rolls setting here where all 3 of their dice are the same number, like this. So if I'd rolled all 4 of these, then I would simply re-roll one of the dice until there is a different die in my pool. So you can't have 3 dice that are all the same number. So sorry, if you roll all 3 6s, you get to keep 2 of them, but the third one's going to get changed on you. Now, when you're taking turns, players will take turns starting with the first player and going around the table in clockwise order. And on your turn, you are able to do a couple of things. First, you can play any number of cheat cards from your hand that you wish to play. So there's no limit to the number of cheat cards that you can play. There are a couple rules for whether you can play the card or not. We'll talk about that in a second. But you can play any number of cheat cards that you want from your hand. The trick is that you have to play all of your cheat cards before you place a die for bidding. So on your turn, you may play any number of cheat cards, but then you must place one of your die, one of your remaining die, on either an item card or on the altar. And we'll talk about what those things do here in a second. When you're playing cheat cards, you can play any number of cheat cards on your turn, but you have to play all of them before you place a die. You're going to resolve each cheat card completely, resolving all of the text that you can before you play the next card. So you won't be able to play a card, do half of its text, play another card, do that second card, and then come back to the text on the first card. The first card gets fully resolved as much as possible, and then the second card will get played. On the cheat cards, you're going to have a couple of different things. You're either going to have action cards or you're going to have ongoing cards. I'm going to pick these up so that I can see what they are here. So your action cards are going to look something like this. They're going to have the word action at the top. When you play an action card, the action card gets resolved and then it simply goes to the discard pile. So if I played this pilfer card, I would get to draw a cheat card, and then I can move any ongoing card in play in front of myself. So that's an option of an example of an action card. The other type of cards that you may have here are ongoing cheat cards. Ongoing cards get played in front of a player at the table, including yourself, so you can play cards on yourself. The ongoing card for Cursed that we're seeing here, anytime you roll a 6 on one of your die, you have to re-roll that die. So you have a little bit of a Cursed action. So this could be played in front of yourself or in front of another player. And then that would allow you to play that. So if I had this played in front of myself, for example, where someone had played this cursed card in front of me, maybe I'm the yellow player, whenever I'd roll a 6, I'd have to re-roll the die. If I, as the yellow player, were holding this pilfer card, then I could draw a cheat card. Actually, that won't let me move that. That moves a card in front of me. So there's a little bit of a penalty. Or, for example, this is a blessed card. On the other side of it, anytime you roll a 1, you can re-roll that die. So maybe the yellow player has these 2 cards in front of him, and as the green player, I want to play Pilfer. I could play Pilfer down, get to draw a cheat card into my hand, and then I could steal this blessed card from the yellow player, put it in front of myself, and now I can re-roll any 1s, and the yellow player no longer gets to. So these cards, you can have any number of ongoing cards played in front of you. There's no limit to the number of ongoing cards that can be played at the table. There's no limit to the number of cheat cards that you can hold in your hand. And again, there's also no limit to the number of cheat cards that you can play. So that is playing a cheat card. You simply play it out on the table. You do what it says. If it's an ongoing cheat card, it gets it played in front of another player and will stay there until it is removed by either another cheat card or some other action at the table. Placing a die. When you're placing your die, you can do one of 2 things with it. You can use it to either bid on an item in the pot, or you can place it on the altar to make an offering. So the blue player here is our first player, and they have a 2, a 4, and a 6. And let's say they choose not to play their cheat card here. They're the one that has the blessed cheat. Well, let's put it out here anyway. So they're going to play blessed in front of themselves just to make sure they can re-roll any 1s that they may have. And then they can take any one of their die and they can place it on an item in the center of the table, including the face down item, or they can place it over on the altar and take one of 2 actions there. The first thing they can do, if they're going to use a die to place it, they literally take their die and they place it on the item that they want. So maybe they want to bid on these 3 Goblin Teeth. And this card here actually counts as 3 Goblin Teeth. You'll see that our red offering up here requires 5 Goblin Teeth. So if the blue player were to get this, then they've got 3 of the 5 teeth that they need to complete the red offering. So if they want to bid right there, that is the extent of the blue player's turn. They optionally chose to play a cheat card. And then they played a die either on an item or the altar, which is something they have to do. Play then proceeds clockwise around the table, which would move to our yellow player over here. Now our yellow player would have the option as well of playing a card here. So maybe they want to play Cursed. Maybe they want to go ahead and play this Cursed over here on the blue player. I'm going to move this reference card off camera. So they want to go ahead and play Cursed in front of the blue player. They figure if the blue player is re-rolling ones, they have to re-roll sixes as well. The yellow player now has a choice to make with their die. When they place the die, again, they could take it and place it on any one of the 4 items that are in the pot, including the face down item, or they could choose to place a die on the altar and make an offering. If you place a die and make an offering, so we'll use this 3, you place the die on the altar. Any number of dice can be placed on the altar, regardless of the number of dice that are there or the numbers on those dice. So I can play that there. What that allows me to do, it allows me to do one of 2 things. I can either draw a cheat card and add it to my hand, or I can use the altar to remove all of the cheat cards in front of one player. So I could use this to remove these 2 cheat cards from in front of the blue player, which I probably wouldn't want to do because I just played a card on them. So we'll just simply draw a curse card from the top of the deck, and we're going to add this to our hand. So we drew a card called Low Standard. Each other player must set one of their unplayed dice to the same value as your lowest unplayed dice. So I can play this card and really mess with the other players on a future turn. Having played a die, that is my turn. Now I can come over here to my black player. The black player has the same option. They can play their card. They have a polite card. This is you may not be the first to play a die onto a face-up item. So they can play this card on someone. So let's play it on our green player just for fun. So we'll move this over here. So our green player now cannot be the first player to place a die on a face-up item card. So the green player could still be the first person on the face-down card, but they couldn't place, right now they couldn't place a card on either this emerald or this bomb card. And then our black player has to do either place a bid on an item with a die, or they could place over on the altar and wipe some cards off the table or draw a cheat card. We're going to simply take and we're going to place, and we're going to put a bid on this bomb card. So we're going to put a bid of 4 on that bomb card. And then play moves to our green player over here. The green player could choose to play one of their cards. And so what they're going to do is they're actually going to play this pilfer action. So they're going to play this action down. This lets them draw a cheat card. And then they can move an ongoing cheat card that's in play in front of them. So they're going to steal this blessed card from the blue player because they like the idea of re-rolling the ones that they have. The pilfer action card is simply going to go to a discard pile. And then we drew Exchange. Exchange lets us discard an item from our hand in order to draw an item from the deck. So if we have an item that we don't want, we can discard it, get rid of it, and draw an item. The green player then now has to place a die. Now, when placing a die on an item, there are 2 rules you have to follow. First of all, I mean, obviously you have to follow any rules from cheat cards that have been played on you, but there are 2 main game rules that you have to follow with every bid that you make. First, you cannot place a die on an item and placing a bid on an item that would tie another player's bid. So if in the example of the green player, I could not play this 4 on that bomb card because that would tie the black player's current bid of 4. So that's an illegal move. The other thing that I'm not allowed to do is I'm not allowed to play a die. I'm not allowed to increase my bid with dice that would bump my bid to 10 or higher. So if the blue player had made a bid of 10 here on the Goblin Teeth, they would not be able to use their final die here and bump that to a 12. The bid can be no higher than 10 because goblins can only count to 10. So those are your 2 rules. You can't tie a player's bid, you can't tie a current bid, and you can't exceed the number 10 when you're bidding. Your bid value has to be less than 10. So our green player, obviously, they can't play a die here. They can't play a die here because they can't be the first player to bid on a face-up item according to this polite card that got played in front of them. So they could use a die over here on the Goblin Teeth. They could use a die on the face-down card, or they could use a die on the altar. We're simply going to put the bid of 5 on the face-down card. Now, the face-down card, we don't know what it is, but at the end of the round, if the green player wins that, not only do they get that card and get to add it to their hand, but they also will get the first player token for the next round. So when you're bidding on this face-down card, obviously you're bidding on an unknown item, but you're also kind of bidding for the first player marker. So having placed the die, we go back to our blue player who does the same thing. They can play any number of curse cards. Now they don't have any curse cards in their hand, so they're not going to play anything. They can simply increase their bid. So we're going to go ahead and put the 4 on these Goblin Teeth and hopefully lock that up. Because now, with that card being placed, with the 10 being placed there, and knowing that my opponents can't bid any higher than 10, that should lock those 3 Goblin Teeth up for the blue player. We come back here to our yellow player who is holding an action card here for low standards. So each other player has to set one of their unplayed dice to the same value as your lowest unplayed die. So I could play that, but my lowest unplayed die is a 4. Everybody else has 4s already, nothing higher than a 4 that's unplayed, so it really wouldn't do me any good. So we're just going to hang on to that, and we're going to come in here and we're going to make a bid. Now, if I want to bid on this face down card, I could not use my 5, even though it's my highest die, because it would tie the green player's current bid of 5. So I'd have to be careful with that. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to place the 5 on this bomb, and I'm going to outbid the black player currently. We come to the black player who has no cards in hand, and so they can simply bid. They could bump their bid up on the bomb to try to beat the blue player, or they could choose to bid somewhere else, or of course they could use the altar to try to get more cheat cards. And I think what they're going to do, they really want the bomb, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to play our second 4 out here. So now we're winning this bid 8-5. So our black player is done with their turn. We're going to move to the green player now, who has the choice of playing their card. So again, we could exchange an item card from our hand in order to draw an item from the deck. But we don't have any item cards in our hand because we're in the middle of the first round. So we're going to hang on to that card, and we're simply going to play another die. Now, I could throw... I can't use my 4 or my 3 on this emerald card because I can't be the first player to bid on something. Throwing dice over here on this 10 is kind of a waste at this point. And then I also have the option of throwing into this mix, although 8-4, and I can only get to a 7, so I see that 8 has already got me outbid here. So maybe I just want to bolster this up by playing a 3 here. Now it's important to note that as you're playing this game, you can see the dice that your opponents haven't played. You can see the numbers on those dice. So unless they've got cheat cards, they're going to let them alter those die faces. You're going to know what they have to bid. And so knowing that I have an 8 here and no one else has bid, this is pretty much guaranteeing that I'm going to get this face down card and also the first player marker for the next round. That's the end of the green player's turn. The blue player has a die, and they're going to go ahead and use this die on the altar. And we're going to use this to draw a card from the cheat deck rather than getting rid of anything. We could have used the altar to get rid of this cursed card in front of us, but we're not going to do that just now. Instead, we're going to draw the sleight of hand. This lets me move a sacrifice die to an item. There are cards that will have you sacrificing die to do things. But we'll hold on to that card for now. And then our yellow player comes out here. Now, the black player here has a 2. So as the yellow player, if I want this bomb, I'm being outbid on it. If I want this bomb, then I could place here to get me a total of 9 to their 8. But they've got a 2 over here, which would get them to 10, which 10 is a completely easy bid, so they would have that. What I think I'm going to do instead is I'm going to play my 4 on this emerald over here and bid on this, because the black player can't win that bid with this 2. And the green player can't bid 4 on that because they're not allowed to tie my bid. So I've just essentially locked up this emerald card for myself. We chose again not to play our card that we have. We're going to play the die out there. Our black player, again, could play cards if they had any. They do not. They're simply going to use this die in the altar to draw another card so that they do have an action card for the next round. And the action we drew is switcheroo. You take the face down item from the pot and replace it with an item from your hand. And that item would also be face down. So you could just take that item if I wanted to. Can't play that now because you have to play cards before you place your die, but I'll be able to do that in future rounds. So then we have the green player here, who obviously we can't bid here. Bidding here would result in just basically throwing a die away and not winning anything. This is the same, would also not win us anything. We can't bid here. Even though we wouldn't be the first player here, we can't tie the yellow player's bid, so I can't play my green 4. I already have this locked down, so it just makes the most sense to pop this 4 up here. And I think what we're going to do is use that to draw another curse card, or cheat card, because the cheat cards are fun. They're what really switch up the gameplay and really make things a little crazy for players. So the action card we drew is Trade Places. This allows swap one of your played dice with a played die that belongs to another player. So I can swap out a low number for one of their high numbers if I wanted to do that. So we'll put that in our hand. This is now the end of the round. You'll notice all of the dice have been played. And now we simply award the items based on who bid. So we have our green player is the only person here, so they're going to get the face down item. The face down item they received is this arrowhead. So they're going to take that, they're going to put that in their hand. Now, you'll notice the card backs are all the same. So I have 2 curse cards, or 2 cheat cards and an item, but my opponents don't necessarily know that, especially as the game goes on and I get more cards in my hand. They're not going to know what I've done, especially if I want to shuffle these up a little bit so they don't know what's what. So there's the green player. Our yellow player is going to take this emerald into their hand. The black player is going to win the bid here, 8-5. So the black player is going to take this bomb card. And our blue player was the only one that bid on the Goblin Teeth, so they're going to take the 3 Goblin Teeth into their hand. And then all the players will retrieve all of their dice so that they have those dice. And we know since each player only has 1 item, a player can't possibly have won right now, so we're going to simply reset for a new round. So we're going to deal out a face-down card. We're going to deal out 3 face-up cards to the table. So to recreate the pot, all of the players are going to re-roll their dice. So we're going to re-roll all of these. And then we'll deal with any curse cards here in a second. Our green player also got the face-down item, so they're going to take the first player marker over here. All right, so we have a 6-6 and a 2. Our cheat cards don't affect those die at all. Our yellow player probably wishes they had some cheat cards in hand because 1, 2, and 2 is not a very good roll. This player has a 5, a 6, and a 2. And our blue player has a 2, a 3, and a 6. And the 6 is fantastic, except the cursed card here is anytime they roll a 6, they have to re-roll it. So they're going to re-roll their 6, and they end up with a 5. So it could have been way worse. We're simply going to play another round, starting with our green player this time, who can play any number of cheat cards and then must bid or use the altar with a die, and rotating around the table until all that happens. This is going to continue over and over again through a series of rounds until one player has enough item cards in their hand to meet the items on either the printed offering, the red offering, or the blue offering. If at the end of a round when players collect items, a player has completed one of those 3 offerings, they reveal those items, they immediately win the game. If 2 players complete an offering at the same time, at the end of the same round, the tie is broken by reading left to right. So the printed offering will beat the red offering will beat the blue offering every single time. If the players are still tied at that point, meaning they completed the same offering, so maybe they both completed the red offering, the rules say the tie goes to the ugliest player, and we'll leave that up to you to determine who at your table that is. That is Goblin Teeth. A couple other quick things to point out. We talked about bidding. When you're putting dice out and bidding on the items, you have the 2 rules of not being able to tie another player's current bid and not being able to exceed 10 with your own bid. Curse cards must follow those rules. So when playing curse cards, if you would play a curse card that would cause an opponent or cause you to bid in a way that would tie a bid, or would cause a bid to go above 10 for a particular player, then that curse card could not be played. The game, what you saw here, is just the basic rules of the game. There are 2 variant rules to the game that you can play. You have the Advanced Goblin variant. The Advanced Goblin variant simply means that when you deal out the red and the blue offerings, you deal them out on their alternate sides. Now these alternate sides will have obviously offerings still. So in this case, you still have the 2 bombs, the 5 Goblin Teeth, and a question mark. The blue still has 2 coins, 2 glowworms, and an arrowhead. But there is text at the bottom of the card now. So one of these items now has a special ability. So in the case of this blue offering, during the course of the game, if we're playing with the advanced rules, I could discard a bomb from my hand to sacrifice one of each of my opponent's dice and be able to do that. With the red offering, I could discard a coin. This lets me draw 2 items and discard one of them. So I'm basically getting an item for free if I discard a coin. Those discarded items get shuffled back into the item deck and can be used again. In the very advanced Goblin mode, you don't play with the offering board at all. So this offering board would go away, and instead you deal one red and one blue offering to each player with the text side up. And so that way players are working toward a different offering and kind of racing to complete one of the offerings in front of themselves rather than one of the offerings that the other folks at the table are going for. And you're still playing with the rule of being able to discard an item to activate the special ability. Now, it's important to point out that if we're playing with the very advanced option and I get dealt, as the black player here, I get dealt these two objective cards, then I have these two abilities. I can't use someone else's abilities. So if the yellow player had something where if they could discard a glowworm to do something, I couldn't do that. I would have to discard either a bomb or a coin to do my thing. So it adds a little bit of variable player powers in there as well. So that's Goblin Teeth, again published by Jellybean Games from designer Frank Tedeschi. The game itself, very quick, very easy to play, very rules light. So it's easy to teach, easy to play. What I like about it, though, is despite the fact that the rules are super simple and super easy to follow, the game itself is actually quite a lot of fun. I like the fact that it plays fast. I really enjoy the fact that the actions you can take, the cheat cards really switch up the gameplay. Is really where the heart of this game is those cheat cards. Because otherwise you're just rolling dice, and whoever rolls the most, the highest number is going to generally win the bids. But the cheat cards really let you switch that up. You're sacrificing dice, forcing other players to sacrifice dice, so now they have less to use. You're getting to change die faces, re-roll dice, you're doing all kinds of crazy things, swapping item cards. It's really good, really fun, lots of laughs. You can really, kind of smack someone around theoretically, figuratively, of course, in the game because of those cheat cards. And someone thinks they're lined up to win, and suddenly I've swapped items with you, or I've swapped random cards from your hand, or all kinds of crazy things that can happen. A couple things that I really enjoy about the game. Obviously, the artwork. There's not a lot of art to it, but the artwork that is there is really nice. I really enjoy just the coloration and the way everything looks. It really does a good job of fitting into the world that they were trying to create. One of my favorite things, though, on these cheat cards, you have obviously the action. So this is the switcheroo action. Lets me take the face down item from the pot, put it in my hand, and replace it with an item from my hand. That's fun and all, but what's really fun about these cards is the flavor text at the bottom of these cards. I didn't show it in the video because I didn't really feel like it added much to the gameplay and kind of walking through how to play the game, but it's really funny, and it's grammatically it's a bit of a nightmare, or can be if you're a big grammar nut, but it's written as in the goblins themselves are talking, and so they're not presented as very intelligent creatures. So for example, on this switcheroo card, it says, Gornag hands very fast. Gornag switch card. Hope new card better. Sometimes it not. It's just funny, and you read these things and you can't help but read them, in another, kind of a weird like goblin voice almost. So my polite card that we saw in the video, you may not be the first to play a die onto a face-up item. Kind of a bad thing. But the flavor text on this, goblin etiquette very clear. Never chew with mouth closed. No bite neighbor's face. Wash twice a year. No more, no less. Really funny stuff. It just makes me chuckle. The exchange card, discard an item from your hand to draw an item from the deck. It just says, this card broken. Korg just take new one. So it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of fun stuff there. As with all the Jellybean games that I've played, they're very family friendly. They're very lightweight, but they're just fun, quick games that you can get out and you can play with the kids, or you can play with your game group while you're waiting on people to get there for the nice, chunky, heavier game that's going to be the staple of your evening. So they have a really nice space that they fill on the shelf. I honestly, of the Jellybean games that I've played, I think that Goblin Teeth is up there pretty close to one of my favorites. It's fun. It's fun laughs. It's a little chaotic, which is always fun. And you're dealing with goblins that are just trying to impress their Goblin King and be the best goblin they can by stealing things, essentially. It's great. So definitely check out the Kickstarter. There's a link below. If you're watching this on YouTube, there's a link to the Kickstarter page down in the description of this video. Drop any comments, questions that you may have below. I'm happy to answer those questions to the best of my ability. If you have if you're watching this on the Kickstarter page, jump over and hit that back button. Jellybean Games are fantastic additions to your collection. They're generally small box games, so they don't take up a lot of space. And like I said, they fit a nice niche for some quick 20-30 minute games that you can get out and play very quickly. With young kids. This is one that very easily can be played with young kids. I've played it with my daughters, who are starting to get a little older now, but but you could certainly play this with, a kid who's 7, 8, 9 years old, as long as they read the text or you've got someone helping them with the text. But that is Goblin Teeth. I definitely recommend checking this out. If it looks like something that you would enjoy, hit that back button. And until next time, keep gaming, friends.